because it's such a tiny market. We're producing 830 million ounces. You multiply that by, the current metal price, call it $30. What's that work out to? That's about 20 billion, a dollar market. How many times can that fit into Apple or Tesla or Nvidia? Any one of those companies can buy the entire silver market in one fell swoop, just with the cash on their bank. And I think that'll happen. And I think the mining sector will eventually get bought up by the high-tech sector because they need the metal.
This is Little by Little with Andy Schechtman.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Little by Little. This person needs no introduction. Keith Neumeyer, the CEO of First Majestic Silver, all-around good guy and advocate for the industry, is joining us today. Keith, thanks for coming on, brother. How you doing?
Well, it's great seeing you again, Andy. It's been a while, and great having this opportunity to chat with you today.
Yeah, the honor is all mine, very much so. Do appreciate it. So we'll jump right into it, man. One of the things that I always talk about when I mention your name, and I find myself mentioning your name quite frequently, as many of the things that you talk about have stuck with me, which we'll get to in a few questions. But I mentioned that you stick out to me as someone who has a background in finance and business, not so much in geology and looking at rocks. And I find that to be something that is intriguing to me as an executive of a mining company that seems so many of the executives are geologists. You're a businessman. So with that in mind, can you tell me a little bit about your journey leading you to the CEO position of First Majestic?
Okay. Well, I guess it dates back almost 35 years. So I've been doing this for some time. And I did start with the banks. I worked for 3 of the largest national banks in Canada. I worked on the floor of the stock exchange, actually, as a pro trader. And I traded equities, arbitrage equities between NASDAQ, Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, the different exchanges. And I being a pro, I split the profits or the losses, with the bank. And I think I did fairly well over, the 6 years I was on the floor. And then technology hit the industry, as many of you probably are aware, in 89, 90. And most of the stock exchanges around North America were closed and everything went electronic. I found myself out of a job. And of course, being on the floor, knowing and watching many of these companies and over, that period of time in my career, it was a natural phenomenon, just to go start applying, for jobs at some of these publicly traded companies that I was quite familiar with. And, being mining is such a big focus in Canada, in Vancouver as well. It was natural to, find a home at a mining company. And, I remember my grandfather owned a big gold placer property up in Barkerville, northern British Columbia. And at 11, 12 years old, I'd go up there and pan gold with him. So, he was, so I got a little bit, a taste of what mining was all about at a very young age. So, and then having the financial background that I did have, it all kind of just came together. And I started working for a couple small little juniors, learned, some of the things you don't do. And then, I was fortunate enough to run into a couple of guys that, were all about my same age, with high energy. And we decided to form our own little venture, and which became First Quantum Minerals. And that was in 1992. So I was the president of First Quantum from 92 to 97. And I remained on the board till 2000. And most of you probably know First Quantum is one of the largest copper companies in the world. So I was, the founding president of that company. And so I kind of went into semi-retirement for a couple of years, and the gold and, whole metals market, was pretty ugly looking, between 98 and 2002. And, when I saw a bottom in the market, I saw gold starting to move, silver starting to move. Silver was at $5, gold was at, $2.40 or something like that. And it's okay, well, it's time to put another mining company together. And I chose silver because of the fundamentals I saw, coming from a copper company. Silver to me looked like gold, looked like copper, had a lot of the same economic fundamentals as copper does. So, but silver I found was a very unique industry with very few players in it, which intrigued me. And this, similar to copper, there's very few players in the copper sector, which turned out quite well for First Quantum. So anyway, so I decided to, more or less duplicate that business, focusing on silver. And of course, naturally, that became Mexico. If you're going to be a silver company, you more or less have to be in Mexico. And going back and forth over, a period of about 2002 to 2004, I put together the management team, and we acquired our first asset in 2004, had it in production by October 2004. And 2004 was our first year of silver production. We produced 25,000 ounces of silver that year, which was, a small amount of silver, of course. But, back then as a startup, it was, I became a bit of a darling of the market, because I was quite early in the whole, focus and getting people back into the mining sector. So we became, quite a well-known story. And today, this year we'll do about 21 million ounces of silver equivalent. And, with the Gatos acquisition behind us in early 2024, we'll break about 31 million ounces in 2025. So
That's incredible, brother. I think somewhere along the line when you were panning with your grandfather, you discovered the fountain of youth, because I was in high school back then, and you look younger than I do, man. So whatever you're doing, you're wearing it well. And congratulations on such a cool story. It really is a cool story to start something from scratch with a couple of buddies and build the largest copper mine on the planet, or copper company on the planet, and then go from there into serial successful entrepreneur in First Majestic. And that's a very cool story. Thank you for sharing. So, I mean, other than you, what sets First Majestic apart from the other major players in the silver mining industry?
Well, I think our focus, you'd see, and it's tough to remain a silver company. And, we did end up buying, a gold project in Nevada, which is currently shut down. But, we had some questions from shareholders saying, hey, now are you going to become a gold company like, Coeur d'Alene and Pan American and Hecla have become over, the last couple of decades? And, always trying to say, no, we're just going to remain focused on silver. But the issue is there's really very few really good quality silver mines around to purchase. It doesn't do us much good to go and buy a bunch of exploration properties, and then, just due to the permitting risk and the length of time it takes from discovery to production, I just don't want to put our shareholders through that grief. And, as a developer, I'm the chairman of a company called First Mining Gold. And, we've been trying to permit a gold mine in Northern Ontario for 8 years now. We just had our annual board meeting just yesterday talking about the frustrations it is, getting a mine permitted. And it doesn't really matter what country you're in. It's all the same. Mining is mining, and it just takes a heck of a long time. So from First Majestic's perspective, we always have to try to find a producing mine. Something is, we could fix it. Maybe it's needs capital, it needs different people, needs a different approach. And that's what really kind of, I think, differentiates us, because, we're a good fixer. And, we buy these mines that are out of favor. Like look at La Pria, for example, the mine I mentioned earlier in this interview that we purchased in January 2004. It was an old mine shut down in 1999, basically a pile of rust. And we went in there and had it in production, within 8 months of purchasing it. And, it became a 3.5 million ounce producer, within the next 5, 6, 7 years after that. And that was from virtually nothing, just an old pile of rust and a resource that was completely undefined. And our technical staff said to me at the time, there's a lot of silver here, and we could turn this into a very profitable operation, which we ended up doing. And we've repeated that a number of times over.
Yeah, which leads me to my next question. You talk about, it's interesting when you think how many gold mines there are versus how many dedicated silver companies versus dedicated gold mining companies. It's a stark contrast, and I think that is kind of what you're getting at here, which leads me to my next question. I remember the first interview I did with you and Elijah Johnson about almost 5 years ago, and I asked you a question at the time. Ironically, the gold to silver ratio was about where it was then, at about 85-1. And I asked you your thoughts on the silver to gold ratio, and I'll never forget your response, because I have used it 1,000 times since. It's reshaped the way that I look at this question. And then, as you said to me, you really don't pay attention to the mining ratio. When you first said that, to the gold silver ratio. And when you first said that, I'm like, well, why not? And you said, because I pay attention to the mining ratio. And really that perspective has shaped how I view the value found in silver. And currently the mining ratio is 7-1. I've heard you say that many times, while the price ratio is, as I mentioned, 85-1. Can you explain the mining ratio and how this discrepancy between the mining ratio and the price ratio exists? And what do you think it would take to close that gap? Because really that's what it's all about to me.
For sure. And I look, it's it's a very good question and not easy to answer. The problem is, and I've said this, multiple times in my PowerPoint presentations and in similar interviews, is that there's about 1 billion ounces of silver that trades every day in the paper markets worldwide. So you've got this group of bankers, and they don't know about mining. They've never been to a mine. They look at a ticker symbol or a price quote, on their computer system, and then they're used to trading, within a range, and that's really it for them. They don't look at deficits. They don't look at where the metal's going. They likely don't even know, what the production worldwide is and what the consumption worldwide is, and the fact that their computer, it wouldn't even operate without silver, within it. So they're complete financial guys, traders, and that's really all they are. And when you have that kind of mentality, you see, a bunch of, like, the Reddit crowd, for example. It's a good example of what my point is, where you get a bunch of buyers that come into the market all within a very quick or short period of time, and the price spikes, and so you get all these traders saying, "Hey, this is a great opportunity to sell some silver," and they're not selling silver; they're selling paper. Right? And then they know from history that they'll never have to call for delivery of that silver. Right? It's just paper to them. So they know that if they could lean on the paper markets enough, they could just wait until the buying ends. And then when it ends, the price will drop, like any kind of supply-demand market in the world. Doesn't matter what it is. When the buying dries up, the price will drop. And they know that. And they'll just wait it out, and they'll buy back that paper, and they'll rinse and repeat time and time again. And it's the question is, will it ever end? And I think it will, because I think ultimately they will wake up to the fact that they have to have some backup. They have to have some silver behind that trade, because every once in a while there is a delivery that takes place, and if all of a sudden they wake up, look at their back office, their lawyers behind the scenes pulling them up and say, "Hey, look, we can't get this metal. We don't need a lot of it, but we just need 50 million ounces to deliver it to Sony, and we've got this big short position, and we can't find the ounces." And then that's when the traders will get a phone call and say, "Hey, look, we gotta stop or lighten up our short position, because we're causing problems in our physical delivery system," because they're quite separate. Like you don't have, like, the big banks, HSBCs or the JP Morgans, the guys that actually deal with the physical metal. They don't really communicate with their traders in the trading desk. They're trading their paper. They're completely different divisions within the bank, and there's virtually no communication between them. So when you close that gap and all of a sudden the communication starts, I think we're there, or getting close to there. And that's why I think we've seen the silver price improve over the last year, because people are waking up to the fact that this is an extremely tight market, and you can't be running 250 million or up to 400 million ounce deficits annually every year for 4 or 5 years in a row without it showing up. And it is now showing up. And, this year we should consume something in the order of 1.4 billion ounces. At least that's the kind of number that's being bandied around. And the miners, I will produce about the same as they did last year, 830 million ounces thereabouts. And, these are huge deficits, and it will show up in price for sure.
Yeah, that's what I've always respected about you, Keith, sincerely, is your courage and your vocal willingness to talk about manipulation. And I agree. I think being short in this market is as dumb as a mud wall, especially to the degree that these large banks are. They say between 6 and 800 million ounces short on COMEX and between 4 and 6 billion ounces, mostly naked, on London. And in London, they admit to trading 290 plus million ounces a day, every single day, but they say those numbers are up to 10 times understated as they only post the final settlement numbers. So in essence, they're trading 3 billion ounces of silver per day, 3.5 times annual global mine supply. Most is naked. And on the subject of manipulation, I wonder if much of the world, like China, like India, like Saudi Arabia, like Russia, these countries who are accumulating silver, if they're playing the long game, understanding, as you say, that this market is being suppressed and using it to their advantage, using that leverage to their advantage through the delivery option. So with that being said, you have been vocal about the silver market manipulation. One of the only ones in the industry that I can think of that has, and that's where you've got mine and many other people's respect, especially amid, as you say, this structural supply deficit. So you kind of answered it, but do you see this coming to an end as the supply-demand fundamentals worsen? And when it does come to an end, does it come to an end in the light of a delivery failure? And if that happens, I suppose the upside potential is extraordinary. Am I missing something there?
Over the last decade, we've seen a couple of markets break. The nickel market, and most recently, the cobalt market before that. These are thinly traded markets, and eventually they break, and they because the physical demand just becomes to a point where the paper markets just can't manage the physical side, and it's a bit of a juggling game for the banks, right? They want to keep the trade going because they're making a fortune doing it, but at the same time, they got to face reality that, hey, look, there's an actual commodity there behind this paper trading that we're doing. And we're making a ton of money on the paper side of things, but, we got to actually deliver this stuff at some point. So, I think we're getting there. And you look at, the solar panel industry, the electric car, or even the just automotive industry, just as a single industry, consuming almost 100 million ounces on its own. The solar panels, estimated about 290 million ounces of consumption this year. So you got two industries, that are consuming almost 400 million ounces of silver, and the miners are only producing 830 million ounces. And these two industries really weren't even there when I put this business together. When I put First Majestic together back in the early 2000s, I was looking at cell phones and computers. Because earlier in my career, before I got into the financial markets, I actually sold computers. I remember, I had the first IBM computer coming out in 1984, I believe it was, and the computer was $10,000, and I actually sold a couple of them, quite interesting enough. But anyway, so I always had a fascination for technology, and when I got into mining, copper just came naturally to me, and silver was even the same. So I was able to formulate that concept and look into the future and say, hey, look, this metal is going to be in huge demand. And I did predict that silver would hit $50 again, its prior high, reached in 1980. And I put the company together at $5 and hit $50 by 2011. What I didn't expect was that the silver price is going to drop all the way back down to $12, over the next, 5 years. That surprised me and surprised a lot of other people. And that was all paper driven, it was these traders, trying to right their positions because all these traders got way offside. And that whole move from 40 to 50, I remember, in April of 2011, I was up at midnight and I actually sold 100,000 ounces of silver at $49.50 for the company. And then I went to bed, and then the next morning I woke up, silver was down $6, which absolutely pissed me off because I wish I'd sold a little bit more. But, nevertheless, that's what happened. And, we'll get back there. We just need to continue this, the consumption. Well, I should mention also, we've got these two industries that are consuming all the silver. We've got now another industry that's people aren't talking about, and it's the nuclear industry. One thing that's fascinating is that these, with the new renaissance of nuclear power being discussed among governments around the world as a clean energy, these nuclear power plants consume a ton of silver. So we're going to end up having another huge driver of consumption over the next decade.
Yeah, and there is another industry too that I've kind of been talking about that seems that no one talks about, and except for the folks at silverwars.com, and that is the military industrial complex and the need for silver in all the high-tech weaponry. And I ask myself all the time, why would 8 commercial banks have the largest concentrated short position of any commodity traded on COMEX in silver? Which is just completely stupid to me. And it lends itself to speculation, but I won't go there, but simply to say, I remember being at dinner with you in Las Vegas a few years ago, and I asked you this question, and I found the answer intriguing. I think our listeners will too. I asked you, Keith, why are you the lone voice who speaks out about this, and why don't more companies like yours withhold production? And your answer was very interesting. Perhaps you could share that with the listeners.
Sure. Well, we withhold production on a fairly regular basis. Coming out of Q3, I think we had 771,000 ounces of silver in inventory on our books. And, with our new mint, which if you want to talk about, we can talk about a little bit later. But, we do have, substantial amount of silver sitting on the floor, for conversion into small retail products, which is, a new business that we're doing, which is pretty exciting. So we're always going to have, a fairly high inventory. And it's worked out quite well for us because, it's cash in the bank, basically. So, I know, some people don't treat it like cash, but I treat it like cash. If we want to sell the entire inventory today, I could just pick up the phone and call one of the banks, and I could, have it sold within the next couple of, be delivered, sold today and be delivered within the next couple of days. So, it is basically cash in the bank. And, but your question earlier was, why don't more mining companies do it? And I guess it's just my background. I'm just a financial guy, and I look at when I look at a rock, I immediately visualize money. What can I turn this rock into? And I think that if you're a geologist, and nothing against geologists, for First Majestic has 300 geologists on our payroll. So we need geologists. They're a very important part of the mining sector. But they look at a rock and they immediately think, where's more rock, right? They don't think about the economics of the rock. And then an engineer, we have about 500 engineers that work for the company as well. So, and then they think differently. So it's just a matter of what you think. When you're pulling the rock out of the ground and then turning it into metal, I know where that metal goes, and then how it's used within industry, how important it is for the human race to continue doing what we need to do to electrify the planet, so on and so forth. And I just think that other executives or CEOs just don't think that the same way as I do. That's all.
Well, and that's my point about you being a businessman. And that's one of the things that's always intrigued me about the way you do things, why I'm a shareholder of First Majestic. I think there's a lot to be said for that. After all, this is a business. A couple of years ago, this is the question that I think most people want me to ask you. A few years ago, right around this time, I received a killer t-shirt from you that famously says triple digit silver. And I shamelessly made some of my own, not to copy the First Majestic ones and not to sell them. I just love them so much. I made them for myself because I think it's an amazing slogan, hashtag triple digit silver. I'm going to put you on the spot, brother. Can you share your ideas or your thoughts on the idea of triple digit silver and its possibility?
Well, I've come up with many phrases throughout my, 21 years running this company, strategic metal, there's no substitute to silver. Copper's the highway, silver's the glue, which was one of the newer ones I've come up with because, you look at a device, any kind, it could be electric car, computer, cell phone, a toaster, a refrigerator, a freezer, whatever the case may be. There's copper in all those components, but it's glue that it's silver. That's the glue that holds it all together. So it's extremely important metal. And when silver went to 50, because I was calling for $50 for the first 10 years of running this business. And then when it went to 50, like the banks, BMO, I remember reading all these research reports, and I think BMO stands out. And they had a $70 target on silver. And so, I figured, geez, $70, that's pretty conservative. Because I looked at the mining ratio and I looked at the gold price, and then I said, we need $100 silver, just to justify the mining industry to go after silver to increase production, because the mining sector is not going to do it unless we have sustained higher prices. Because even at $30 silver, the margins aren't there to really give us enough profit to go and invest the billions of dollars necessary to get more silver into the marketplace. And so I came up with the phrase triple digit silver, and I see it's being copied now a few times. I'm no longer the only one saying it, which is nice to see. I was the first to say it, but I think we'll get there. I think, you look, it's a simple math. You call it 10 to 1 because it's easier to calculate. But you talk about $2,700 silver divided by 10, that's $270 silver. Now, I've never suggested $270 silver, but really, if you look at the mining ratio, that's where it should be. So triple digit, $100+ silver should be easily achievable.
I mean, doesn't the mining ratio and the real price have to find some form of symbiotic relationship at some point?
I think it does. Being a trader, on the floor of the, Vancouver Stock Exchange for 6 years. And, I see markets that are not perfect, because there's too many sellers or sometimes there's too many buyers. And it takes a while. That's why exchanges halt stocks sometimes, because if a stock goes down too much or up too much, the exchange will step in. They'll halt the stock and wait for an equilibrium to occur, and then they'll reopen it for trading, a few hours later or maybe the next day. And because the whole concept behind that is, to kind of smooth out those major ups and downs that occur in all markets. And we saw that in the nickel market. The LME halted the nickel market for, I think it was a week, until they could try to figure out how to bring some equilibrium into that market. And I think we'll see that in the silver market, because it's such a tiny market. We're producing 830 million ounces. You multiply that by the current metal price, call it $30, and it's what's that work out to? That's more about 20 billion a dollar market. How many times can that fit into Apple or Tesla or Nvidia? Then any one of those companies can buy the entire silver market in one fell swoop, just with the cash on their bank. And I think that'll happen. And I've been also, I've said a number of times over the last several years that I think the mining sector will eventually get bought up by the high tech sector, because they need the metal. And we've seen Elon Musk make a couple of investments in lithium and nickel. It's early days, but I think that the mining sector, or pardon me, the electronic sector will come in and start buying up some of these mining companies.
Yeah, I remember reading something you put out. I think it was either at the beginning of 2023 or might have been 2022. Everything blends together, but you made a comment to the extent that it was the first time you had seen large companies like Sony or car companies or whatnot showing up at the trade shows, trying to disintermediate the market and coming right to you and trying to strike a deal. And I always thought that was very interesting, that is more or less what you're talking about. These folks realize that for their industrial applications, if they're a minute late to what could ultimately happen, it puts them behind the eight ball. I agree with you. I think that probably would be how it would go. It certainly would make a lot of sense. Shifting gears a little bit, I've been talking with your staff back and forth, although playing phone tag, about carrying some of the product in your new mint. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Oh, sure. Okay. Well, thanks, Andy. We started, it was an idea from one of our VP marketing, actually, back in 2008, where we were getting requests from shareholders about, hey, why don't you make some coins? And, I was like, okay, fine. So we eventually, I didn't want to go and buy the silver, I want to act, and we're fortunate because we're doré producers. So we're not concentrate producers. So if you're a concentrate producer, which you won't get the silver, because all that silver goes into the smelter, and it doesn't go to the account of the mining company. It goes to the account of the smelter. So that mining company, if they want to produce a silver product, they would actually have to go buy the silver in the market. We don't have to do that. So over time, that business grew and grew and grew. And it became obvious over the last couple of years that the mints weren't simply willing to give us the supply we needed. We had dory bars, or not dory bars, we're fine 1,000-ounce bars sitting on their floors for months and months and months. And I'm not going to name the mints, but they know who they are. And, they were holding on to our metal for, 4 to 6 months. And we'd be on the phone with them regularly saying, hey, where's our silver? And, oh, sorry, you're in line, and, we'll get to you when we can. And, all this stuff. So we had customers lining up. You go on to our e-commerce, bullion store, the old one, the First Majestic one, and you see we'd be sold out. And you were getting complaints from people saying, hey, look, you can't even deliver us the metal. So I said, screw this. And I decided to open up our own mint. So we started over a year ago, and it's a complete new business, a complete startup. We're a mining company. So it was a bit of a learning curve, but I got some great people from the industry that were willing to move over. We sourced out the equipment. We sourced out a building, and started working. And we ran our first bars out of there in March of this year. We started with 5-ounce, 10-ounce, and 1 kilo bar bars. And we just started our coin production in September. So we're now producing coins. We just released our brand new Buffalo coin, which is pretty cool. It's actually selling quite well. And we've got some other products hitting the market over the next couple of months as well. So we've got a great sale on, which we're doing a year-end Christmas sale, $1 over spot on selected products only, not all the product line, but some of the selected products, only $1 over spot. I think it's probably the best price out there. The sale's going to end in the next week or so. So you won't see those kinds of prices again for maybe until next Christmas. I don't know. I can't even guarantee that, but you definitely won't see those prices again for a long, long time. We generally are $3 above spot. Some of the special products that we have are actually $5 over spot. But we think we're quite competitive, and the business is doing quite well. We hope to get about 10% of our production through the mint in 2025, with the goal of getting 100% of our production through the mint in the next couple of years.
That's fantastic. That's vertical integration, and hence the businessman in you seeing opportunity. I hope to be carrying your product after I finalize things with your staff. It's something that I would be honored to do, especially coming from a reputable thought leader, businessman like yourself. And First Majestic, I'll tell you as an aside, I think what you really need to do would be making those dice you used to make. One of the coolest silver products I'd ever seen. You're the only one I ever saw make them. I assume that there's a lot of milling and work that goes into them, but these were just like backgammon dice that were made of silver and amazing. Do you still carry those, by the way?
They are very expensive to make. We lost money selling them actually, but I didn't mind because it's when you make money on some products, you lose money on others. It's kind of a natural part of any business. But it was quite. We still get requests for them today, and I'm not sure if we'll ever produce them again. It is very complicated, very difficult to do, and I have a couple myself. I love holding it in my hand and just playing with it. It gives me a lot of pleasure.
Well, it's in our DNA. Man's been in search of it for over 5,000 years. I understand that very well. You've been very generous with your time, Keith. Just one more question for you, brother, and I really do appreciate you coming on. Looking ahead, what would you say is your vision of silver? You kind of touched on that, and also of First Majestic. And is there a message you'd like to leave those who are passionate about silver's potential with? Because most of the people, we've had record year after record year, and the majority of the sales, probably 80%, have been in silver. The truth is, I don't think that there's a trade that has the asymmetrical qualities that silver does, meaning the lowest downside with the most potential on the upside. And the interesting thing is that I've always sold silver as wealth, not as an investment, but intriguingly, it offers incredibly upside potential for an investment, as does your stock, First Majestic. So what do you want to leave people with in terms of your vision of silver, where you expect First Majestic to go, and anything you'd like to leave people with who are really very passionate about silver's potential.
Yeah, I think that, being a mining executive and, being in the mining industry and financial markets for so long, one thing I have learned is patience. The mining sector has to play the long game. We're making investments today that won't bear fruit for sometimes 3 to 4 or 5 years and sometimes even longer into the future. But we have to have that vision. We have to have that goal in mind to know that the dollars we're spending today are going to benefit our shareholders sometime in the future. And it's always a bit of a challenge doing that, because, you've got pressure from geologists saying, hey, we got to go drill here. You've got pressures from engineers saying, hey, we got to make this investment here in this new technology. Then you've got the demands from the marketplace. So your stock is underperforming, or you got the demand, from your financial perspective, you got to raise capital, or, whatever the case may be. So, there's a lot of moving parts in the mining business that I think most investors don't really appreciate. It's a very complicated business, and it just takes a ton of patience. For investors that are looking at the mining sector, I always say, just look for management, and just look for successful management teams, because generally speaking, management teams that have done well in the past generally do well in the future. It's not always rosy. Not every management team hits 100%. I don't think there's anyone in the world that hits 100%. If a management team is hitting 70%, 80%, that's pretty darn good. And I think First Majestic has delivered those types of success rates, over the 20 years that we've been in business. And but it's not always easy, and it's not always up. Sometimes we do run into challenges, and we have to kind of eat through them and get to the other side of those challenges. And we got a very good, dedicated team that's very focused, and where we're always working to accomplish that goal. When it comes to silver itself, wow, geez, I've called it the most frustrating metal on the planet, because, I look at the fundamentals and then I look at the price and they just simply don't make sense. But I know that, going back to our previous comment about markets, and that how they can go for a long time being imperfect. And I think we do have an imperfect market right now. What's going to make that market into a perfect market? Meaning that it actually follows the actual supply demand. I don't know exactly what it's going to take, but I think it's going to be a supply shock. I think that there's going to be a consumer out there, whether it's an automotive company or a computer company or a cell phone company, who knows what it's going to be. Or in the nuclear industry or the military industry, these bombs are going off, as you talked about earlier, all contain a ton of silver, and it doesn't get recovered. That's for sure. So we're consuming this metal at a pace that just cannot affect the price. But it's going to take patience, and there will be a supply shock, and it's going to hit mainstream. All the hedge funds in New York are going to wake up and think, oh, geez, did you just hear that so-and-so couldn't get their metal, and they had to delay production of, whatever product because they can't get their silver. And that starts hitting mainstream and starts hitting the investment community. You get a couple of hedge funds coming into the silver market. It is so tiny, the price of the metal could double within a couple of days. I think that's the kind of momentum or move that we're going to see at some point in the future.
I agree. I've always felt it would end in a battle between the industrials and the investors, like the hedge funds. And I think you're spot on and quite astute. And that, again, to your credit, is one of the reasons that I have owned your shares or shares in your company for quite some time and continue to accumulate them. I thank you for your time, Keith. For more people who want to find out about your mint, about your information that you give out, you're all over the place, and just find out more about First Majestic, where do we go? And I'll post all of that at the bottom, of course, but how do people find out more about what you're doing and what your companies are doing?
Well, thanks for that, Andy. And we do have a YouTube channel, so just look that up, First Majestic. And then I'm on Twitter, just Keith_Neumeyer. Just you can find me there. I don't do a lot of tweets, but company news and other investments I'm involved in, I often tweet out news releases of companies that I follow and try to help out as much as I can, helping investors, with ideas and so on. And go to the company's website, firstmajestic.com. There's a power corporate presentation there on the homepage. Go to firstmint.com as well if you're interested in the physical side of the market. And just call us. We have a 1-800 number if you'd like to talk to anyone within the company.
Right on. Just a quick shout out for Jay Martin's Vancouver Resource Investment Conference in January. I look forward to seeing you there, Keith. And
absolutely,
if you got time, first beers on me. Thanks for coming on, brother. I hope you and your family have fantastic holidays and a very happy, healthy, and prosperous New Year for you, your family, and your businesses. You're a good man, and I appreciate you spending a little bit of time with us. Thanks again, buddy. And until next time, look forward to picking up where we left off.
Well, thanks again, and Merry Christmas to you, and Happy New Year as well to you and your family.
Thank you, brother.
Little by Little with Andy Schechtman.